Overextending in Magic the Gathering. What is it? Why is it a problem? And how can we avoid it in our EDH games? Today, we'll be discussing all of this and more, and we're going to learn how we can get better at Magic the Gathering. Has this ever happened to you? You're at your LGS and you're playing some commander. You decide to bring out your aggro deck. You want to go fast and you want to hit hard. And you start playing and you're doing great. You're able to ramp out fast in the early turns and get down all of your biggest threats. It gets to a point when you have so many creatures on the board and you're swinging for a lot of damage every single turn. But then it happens. You get board wiped and you have no more cards in your hand. Maybe that's happened to you. Or what about this? You're playing your mid-range combo deck and you decide to bring out one of those combo pieces early in the game, because not only is it a combo piece, it's also extremely valuable. And then you're able to get this combo off as early as turn 4. And as you're explaining the loop or explaining the combo, you get an instant speed removal spell thrown your way and you cannot react. This, my friends, is overextending. Putting all of your eggs in the basket too soon, or too much at one time. Commander is an interesting format in the fact that you can almost guarantee that every deck at the table has at least 1 to 2 board wipes. Some players are a bit crazy and run absolutely none, but in most cases you can count on every deck being able to wipe the board clean. This is a lot different than 60 card formats, where this is typically reserved for mid-range lists that are just trying to stick 1 or 2 threats, or control lists that are trying to completely wipe the board consistently to make sure that they can get to their late game win con. Commander is not like that. Even the aggro decks run board wipes. Even the battle cruiser decks sometimes run board wipes. You're almost seen as an irresponsible player if you don't have something like this, or if you don't run interaction. I've said in the past multiple times that we should be running a lot of interaction in our deck. But on the flip side, how do you play around this? How do you make sure that you're not putting too much onto the table at once? Let's make sure we get our definitions correct here. Overextending in the most simplest of terms is going all in without any sort of safety or just at the wrong time. When playing EDH specifically, there's a concept called the window. I want you to think of a window specifically. Maybe look outside your room or wherever you're at right now. Think about an EDH game as a window that gets bigger and smaller over the course of a game. Now, this can start really big, go really small, and then really big again throughout a game. It can also start extremely small and only get bigger as the game goes on. Either way, your window is the opportunity in which you can present a win, or you can really go all in on whatever your deck is trying to do. So how do we gauge what this window is? Well, it really depends on what your deck is trying to accomplish. Is your deck an aggro deck? That window might start really big and only get smaller throughout the game as interaction starts flying and opponents see you as a threat early on, and they make that window as small as possible. Where if you're playing a control deck that tries to win through some sort of omniscience combo, or a big mana combo, or just big creatures, your window starts extremely small and only gets bigger as the game goes along. Now, that's the overall storyline, I guess you could say, of your decks. It depends on what your deck is trying to accomplish, whether it's a combo deck, an aggro deck, a control deck, or a mid-range deck, or any combination of these. This window looks a little bit different for each of these styles of decks. Now, the window also changes based off of what your opponents are doing. And this is where overextending really comes in. As an aggro deck, a lot of people think, I need to just dump my hand, put a lot of stats on the board, and just go ham. But that's not exactly what I would describe as aggro, at least in a game of Commander. Aggro decks certainly have the potential, if not stopped, to be able to win very fast, even if it's just through combat damage. But the best aggro players know to play at a reasonable pace so that not only are you skirting any eyes and threats, you're also able to make sure that you still have plenty of cards if and when the inevitable board wipe or removal spells come flying your way. Some aggro decks try to treat this completely, for example, Toski or Samut, who like to draw cards through hitting your opponents. These are the kind of aggro decks I love playing because they really help out with the consistency side of things, but I digress. As a well-tempered aggro player, the last thing you want to be doing is dumping your hand simply because you have a bunch of low-cost creatures that can deal 5 or 6 damage here and there. As soon as you're at 2 cards left in hand, with no source of card draw, and a completely tapped out board, that is the perfect time, as any other player sees, to board wipe and make sure that you are completely out of the game. And as a control player, If you are trying to shove your big creatures or your win cons way too early in the game, not only are you making it easy for any aggro deck at the table to win, due to the fact that you are drawing so much attention and taking valuable removal spells away from the mid-range players, but you're also not really functioning as your deck is intending. Once again, overextending. So the reason overextending is so bad and why we want to avoid it at all costs, it's because in most cases, we're just not performing the way our deck is intended to perform. Aggro decks are meant to pressure life totals consistently every turn. Whether that's 3 or 4 damage or 20 damage doesn't change much. The only thing that it changes is how targeted you end up getting. The best aggro decks I've seen are the types of decks that are able to do 3 to 4 damage to their opponents every single turn cycle, so that when they really do want to go all in, their opponents are at a pretty decent 15 to 25 life, and they're able to knock them out either one at a time or all at once. Whereas the best control decks that I know are able to consistently have a presence on the board and make sure the game gets to the pace that they want it to be at. They interact when it's needed most, and they wait for their window to get just big enough where they can start shoving their win cons, whether that be big creatures or their big combo. Understanding the window of your deck specifically is going to be absolutely crucial if you want to be more successful in your EDH games. So let's go over how we can avoid overextending in our games. What kind of cards should we add to prevent something like this happening? And what kind of philosophy can we adopt in order to make sure that this just doesn't happen to us anymore? As an aggro deck, I truly think the best way that you can counteract overextending is through optimization of your mana curve, having plenty of 3 mana and 4 mana option threats rather than 1 to 2 mana option threats, so that you're playing only 1 to 2 cards per turn. Not only in the 3 to 4 mana slots are you going to have more valuable creatures that have a lot more powerful of effects, but also it's really going to stop you from just dumping your hand all at once. Next, after that, as an aggro deck, you need to be able to find ways of drawing cards by doing your thing. Aggro needs to be as efficient as possible since they are trying to pressure life totals. So if you draw cards through dealing combat damage, that's going to be perfect. If you draw cards through playing more creatures, that's going to be great. If you draw cards through dealing non-combat damage, that's going to help you out a lot as well. Finding any sort of way to draw because of your payoff is going to help you as an aggro deck. Always make sure you have plenty of resources to refuel your engine. And lastly, as an aggro player, you need to be as aware as possible at what your opponents might be able to do. Understanding the range of your opponents and what they possibly can do at any time is going to be amazing for you. If you know you're going up against a slower control deck, you can assume this player is going to have 1 to maybe even 2 answers for you at any given point in time. This is when you're looking for if they're tapped out, what kind of mana they have up, or if you can somehow politic your way into attacking somebody else so that they don't come after you. Understanding what kind of removal your opponents might have as well. If your opponents are getting to the 6 and 7 mana slots, you can assume at least one of them has a board wipe, especially if they're trying not to play as many creatures as you are. When this happens, it might be good to stay off just for a little bit, and if you have 2 to 3 creatures that are reliably dealing this damage over and over and over again, there's no reason to play even more of those creatures. That is a win more mentality, and unless it's going to win you the game, there's no reason to play them. Now, as a control player, what should we do in order to make sure that we don't overextend? Control is a lot easier in this case. As an aggro player, you're constantly trying to toe the line between complete all-out aggression and creating damage engines that are able to consistently threaten life totals every single turn, while also being able to protect your pieces. As a control player, the types of pieces you're looking to protect and make sure you're not running out too quickly is all of your advantage engines. Let's say you are playing 2 powerful cards like Esper Sentinel and Rhystic Study in your deck. The main goal should be able to play one of them at a time and not both at a time, as great as it might feel. Same goes for if you have Rhystic Study and Smothering Tithe in your deck. While it is possible that your opponents do not have complete enchantment removal, or they might only have 1 enchantment removal and they have to make a choice, in most cases you don't want to bank on the fact of them having either of those things. You want to slow the game down as much as possible, so the less resources you can have on the table, the less removal will be coming your way. Now, when it comes to you actually interacting with the board as a control player, you might think control should be proactive. You might think control should be the one forcing the issue when it comes to interacting with the table. But I'd like to say no. You should be responsible enough to make sure that you have an answer, but at the same time, making sure that priority is passed in the right way and making sure that you're interacting a little bit selfishly is going to help you a lot when it comes to slowing the game down. Turns out you actually don't care if the aggro player is attacking somebody else. In fact, you might actually actively try to encourage that in the game. Oh, you're playing aggro? Nice. I won't remove your things if you go this way. I won't remove your things if you go that way. Then it gets to the point where the window gets even bigger because as soon as it's down to you and the aggro player, you have all the answers because you didn't need to use them. Your opponents needed to use theirs. So what makes this difficult is what happens if the aggro player is coming at you. Well, this will be the time where you will have to board wipe and wait for them to overextend. If they never do, you might have to just lose out on some value through a board wipe or just 1-for-1 removal. But in most cases, when an aggro player thinks they have you, they're most likely going to overextend. So be a bit selfish when you're playing control. You have plenty of interaction because you're being responsible for yourself. This does not mean, however, that you need to remove things if they are not hurting you. This is so that you can get to your late game win cons, whether that's big creatures or a combo or a huge mana spell that's able to win you the game on the spot. And that is all I really have to say about overextending in EDH. This is a concept I've been learning a lot recently through playing 60 card standard, as well as just playing a ton of EDH games recently. So I hope this advice was helpful to you, and I hope you can apply it to your next EDH game or your next 60 card game. Thank you all for watching to this point. If you guys did enjoy, please feel free to like and subscribe. But for now, that's all from me. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all next time.